Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Now everything should be working. Yes, everything should be fine right now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And I just want to begin by saying, I do apologize for the little technical difficulties that I had before. I got everything figured out. Everything should be working. It's just my software right now to go and live stream all this. It was being a little bit of a prick. So that was the main problem of that. So anyways, going back to what I was talking about, folks, yes, today we are going to have a very magical episode. So now that we know that everything is back on track, that everything is all good, now we can get back into the action, and I can bring you all the madness about the animation news and beyond of what we got this week. So now that I'm all set, now that I'm all prepared, are you guys legitimately ready right now to get things started? Are we all set to go and begin this? Alright, let's see. Okay, good. Now people are there. I'm ready again. Alright, that is perfect to hear. Great. Now it seems fine. Now I made sure everything is all good. Now we can officially get things started. And now let's go ahead and check out the trailer for Pixar's next animated feature after Toy Story 4, Onward. So let's check this out. Okay, so, whoops, sorry. Alright, so that was the trailer for Onward. And, I gotta say, honestly, it is intriguing. Like, of course, I just want to point this out right now that what we are seeing right over here is not necessarily something that really does explain a whole lot about the movie itself, but rather just our first look and the introduction about the world that this is set in, where basically you take all the stereotypical fantasy elements, like you take gnomes, mermaids, unicorns, trolls, and all that kind of stuff, and you put that in a modern setting. Now, I do understand that technically this is not the first time that we've seen this kind of environment in a movie. We've seen this not too long ago on Netflix, actually, with the movie Bright, starring Will Smith, which is like a buddy cop comedy. Not necessarily a comedy, but a buddy cop fantasy where it's this magical world filled with orcs, trolls, and fairies, and elves, and all those kinds of creatures in a modern environment. But that film turned out to be a disaster, both critically and for audiences. It was just crap. So with Pixar coming in and putting their spin on that concept, it is like a nice fresh welcome that maybe we can have some kind of palate cleanser from that movie, from Bright. But in all seriousness, though, looking into this, honestly, I don't know if I feel like I'm completely sold onto this movie. I'm not 100% sure if this is something that I feel like, okay, I gotta put this as my most anticipated animated film of 2020, because so far from what I am seeing, I mean, the animation does look really good, and you do have that part where it is both familiar, but you have that aspect that it's all like magical creatures living in this environment. Like, there is that familiarity, but also mixed in with the fantasy at the same time, but there's not a whole lot that I'm seeing that's really selling me onto this. I mean, I guess you could say that they're about to go, like, the adventure itself is going to be what's going to mainly sell this movie, but we barely got the adventure. It's just, we have the little intro where the main characters of Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, they're gonna go and set off on this weird quest that we're not 100% sure what it is, because all we know is just the environment. We just know about the area that the characters live in. Like, we see all the trolls, all the mermaids, the centaurs, and all the different mythical creatures just doing regular tasks that people would do every day. Now, I will give this movie that there are a few elements that I do find it pretty funny. Like, for me, what I find to be probably the best part of this trailer is the one with the garden gnomes, where like one garden gnome is just standing there, the other guy's like, get back to work. Okay, that part I do find it to be pretty funny. But outside of that, though, there's not a whole lot that I feel like is something that can completely sell me in terms of this movie. Now, I know that technically the environment itself supposed to be a big part of this movie. I guess that's kind of the whole point of this teaser trailer, is to sell us on this world, because that's kind of the introduction, to show us how mythical creatures like gnomes, trolls, and all these kind of characters live in a modern society, how they would live in a modern environment, and how they would go and function. At that point, I feel like it's definitely not enough in terms of selling us into this movie. I've heard a little bit of what the story can be about, and probably that's going to be a bigger player than the concept that we do have, because for the most part, I mean, it is everyday life, but with fantasy creatures, and that's all there is, and there's not much that really it can... I just feel like there's not a whole lot that it can really sell us onto. I mean, like, yeah, you got a mermaid in a living pool texting, and like you got like this troll that's just living his regular life, just getting the mail, saying hi to a centaur that's just on a morning jog. And which, by the way, I gotta say, like, when it comes to the troll, like, maybe it's just me, but like when you see the troll that's just like waking up in the morning just saying hello to the centaur, don't you think that the design of this troll looks a lot like the one in Frozen? Like, you know, the little rock trolls that raised, you know, that raised Kristoff? Like, that's what this troll really does remind me of. And I know that technically, I mean, it is part of the Disney family, even though this is not by Disney Animation, this is by Pixar. So far, it is something that I do find is kind of coincidental, but honestly, with all this, it's just, there's not necessarily enough that's selling me on this movie. It has to do a little bit more than just the whole, you know, just the whole concept of the world alone. It's not necessarily that strong enough, and especially the fact that this is coming from Pixar, and usually with Pixar, we usually expect a little bit more from the company. We usually expect something that could be grand, and usually when it comes to Pixar, they would immediately sell us with the environment, with the whole world, whether it be like with WALL-E set in a post-apocalyptic future, or even with Toy Story, where it's technically our world, but when we're not there, the toys would magically come to life, or with Finding Nemo, with A Bug's Life, with Inside Out, with Coco, of course. You know, with all these movies, usually that is something that Pixar would be very strong with. But in this case, it is something that's a little bit different, especially the fact that this is not necessarily your regular Pixar film. This is from the director, in which is from Dan Scanlon, who is also the director of Monsters University. So basically with this film, they're giving him a chance to become a prominent Pixar director, so that maybe they could go and get more people to get up in the ranks as like the major Pixar alumni, you know, people like Pete Docter, Lee Unkrich, Andrew Stanton, Brad Bird, like to be up, you know, so that they can find new people that they can bring the legacy of Pixar and like have it continue forward, so that they could be up in the ranks as these guys. I understand that they need to find more different directors to fill that role, But honestly, with this one, I'm not going to judge it immediately. I'm not saying that, oh, this kind of looks like it's going to suck and stuff like that, because you got to keep in mind, of course, this is a teaser trailer, and we're not going to be getting it until way late in next year. So this is something we do have to wait and see. But I will give the benefit of the doubt, because the thing is, we're not seeing a whole lot of it. We're only seeing the introduction to the world that this movie is set in. We have yet to go and experience the story. We have yet to be fully introduced to the characters, and we have yet to fully indulge ourselves into the story. Maybe when the official full trailer is going to be coming out, which I wouldn't be surprised would be sometime when Frozen 2 would be out soon, so maybe in late October or at the beginning, or most likely at the beginning of November. Like, by the time we're going to get a full trailer, that's going to be the moment when we're going to fully understand what this movie is about, because so far, this is not necessarily saying much, and this is not necessarily showing us enough to really have us be impressed. And who knows how this is going to go. And so far, I will say, like, even with the new characters, or the main characters, like, you got the main character played by Tom Holland, which I don't know if it's just me. Also, I just need to make another comparison. Like, when you look at the Tom Holland elf, I think it's supposed to be an elf, but you look at him, it looks like a fantasy version of Linguini from Ratatouille. Like, don't you think he has that similar look to him? Like, you know, the skinny, lanky body, and, like, you got the big nose, and the curly hair. Like, it's basically Linguini from Ratatouille a little bit, but then, like, just make him an elf. That's how you get it. I'm surprised they didn't even get the same voice actor to come in and voice this character, but no, they got to go into the celebrity route and try to bring in Tom Holland, which I'm not going to bash any of the actors. I know they're highly respected, and it does have a very prominent cast: Tom Holland, Chris Pratt, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Octavia Spencer. But so far, back to what I was talking about with the characters, of course, you start off with, you know, this lanky, like, he looks more like the Tom Holland elf. He looks like he's going to be the straight guy. He's going to be the one that's a little more serious. But then you also got the Chris Pratt one, who's more buff, and he looks more brawn than brain, and he's going to be going out and wants to go on this crazy adventure. That looks like the kind of character he wants to be in this. So, I don't know. Overall, it's just, I'm just going to say, like, there are a few funny moments, again, like I said, like, with the gnomes, and even with the whole unicorn elements, treating them like raccoons or treating them like rats. You know, that, you know, it does have a few funny jokes, but it has yet to fully sell on me with it, and that's the movie. It has yet to show us the movie aspect, and I think that's the best way to put it. So, honestly, when it comes to this teaser trailer, I'm not fully sold on it, but I am going to keep an open mind, and I just want to wait and see. I feel like I need to see more in order to make me fully feel like if this is going to be something that's worth being excited over, if this is something that it can offer a lot more than world building of this modern magical world, because so far, let's be honest, this setting right over here, it's not going to be enough to fully sell us on a new animated feature, and especially from a new Pixar feature. So it's got a lot of shoes that it still has to fill. So that's honestly my comments that I have to say on that. So with that said and done, let's go into the chat wall right over here, and I want to ask you guys, what do you all think about this teaser trailer of Onward? Is it something that you guys want to go and check out? Are you guys anticipating for it? Are you guys excited for it? Or are you disappointed by it? Or are you not excited by it? Let me know about your thoughts, and let's go and see what people have to say on this. First of all, I need some water. Okay, now I got that refreshment. Let's go ahead and see what people has to say on this. Let's see. This sort of reminds me of the Flintstones. Think about it. It's set in a fantasy world, but acts like how modern day works similar to the Stone Age setting in the Flintstones. It is a concept that's not super original, but then again, Toy Story's concept wasn't original either, but Pixar managed to pull it off fantastically, and I'm sure they will do the same with Onward. Also, have you noticed Pixar sure loves to have duo characters in the main focus, like Woody and Buzz, Marlin and Dory, Wally and... Oh yeah, that's true. Like, oh my god, there's actually a whole lot of them when you do think about it. Let's see, you got Woody and Buzz, you got Marlin and Dory, you got Linguini and Remy, you got Wally and Eve, you got, well, technically it would be a trio, but, like with Up, there's like Carl and Russell, Coco, you got, Miguel and Hector, Good Dinosaur, there's Arlo and Spot. Inside Out, there's Joy and Sadness. There's a whole bunch of them. Like, you do bring up a very good point. And yeah, and technically it is true. And I think you might have nailed you might have hit the nail on the head on something where it doesn't feel as original. Is the fact that it's a modern environment, but with a twist. We've seen so many of those, and that's a great example. It's not just our modern culture, but set in a fantasy world. We've seen so many of that, like especially with the Hanna-Barbera shows, like with the Flintstones or even with the Jetsons. But again, also, you do bring up another good point of the fact that same can technically be said of Toy Story, where toys would come to life when no humans would be around. Something that's already been done for decades, but Toy Story revolutionized it. So that could be the same case with Onward. You definitely bring up a good point there. Let's see. I gotta say, I haven't been this excited for an original Pixar film since Inside Out. The concept gives a lot of potential, the visuals are fantastic, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland will never not be awesome, and the overall story sounds like it'll hit some deep emotional beats. Now, let me just ask, am I the only one who hears a dash of Rex Dangervest in Pratt's performance? That could be true. I mean, like, let's just go and hear a little bit of that again.
I see you've brought sustenance for our adventure.
Well, I mean, when you do think about it, technically it is true, but it looks like Chris Pratt's character could share a bit of similarities to Rex Dangervest from the Lego Movie 2, where it's supposed to be like this guy that's all about the adventure, that's all about action, and all about being macho and cool, and especially with this character, he really does resonate to that. And yeah, that is true. That is something that I have yet to bring up. Like, one benefit and one great thing that I can say that, honestly, it goes without saying that the visuals here, at least they do look pretty good. They do look very strong, and that's going to be something that I am not worried about whatsoever that Pixar is going to go and pull off. I'm sure, I am confident that the animation here will be fantastic, and especially you're giving Pixar fantasy elements, something that they have yet to fully dive into since, honestly, the closest that they have been was with Brave, and that's it. Or at least this kind of fantasy element. So with this movie, I'm sure they can pull off something that can look amazing. So there is definitely that. Let's see. The teaser trailer looks interesting and makes me hyped for this movie. This reminds me of Netflix's Bright, or Ugly Americans, in which fantasy creatures are living in a modern environment, except the only difference is that there are no humans in this movie so far. I have to say, I am not a huge fan of the character designs, but I love the concept and I have faith in Pixar. Hopefully this will be a better version of Bright and maybe have a strong world building with less obvious shoved in message. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, that's kind of the thing. It's like, I'm sure like this will be brought up at times, but comparing Onward to Bright will be the same thing as comparing Sausage Party to Food Fight. You know that the animated film is going to do a heck of a better job than the piece of crap that's been infamous right now. So, you know, it's just, that's mainly the thing here. It's just, you know that Onward will do a far better job because Pixar, they got competent filmmakers. Whereas, Bright, you have Max Landis, and, look how well that went. Alright, I'm gonna go and, read one more of this. I understand your problem with this trailer, but to me it looks like Bright with Will Smith in there, but except it looks better due to a better story and hopefully a better script. I hope it looks good than I expect when the whole official trailer comes out. For now, we should agree that this movie Onward should be better than Bright. Yeah, just like I said, that's what we need to expect. Like, it would be an embarrassment for Pixar if this thing ends up being equal or even worse than frickin' Bright. Oh boy. Okay. So, with that said and done, I think we're pretty much all good with Onward, and now it is time that we shall go and move on to our next story. And for our next one, we got another trailer, but this time around, it will be a bit of a bonus miscellaneous. Now, this is not technically an animated project, but some could say it kind of is because it is puppetry. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I've already seen this trailer, unlike Onward, where this is honestly my first look. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this right now, but yeah, this was honestly, like, I haven't even seen the trailer before. Like, watching this here was my first time seeing the trailer of Onward. But going back to what I was talking about, in the case of this trailer that we have here, I have seen it, and I'm gonna be honest, I have never been this excited for something that came out of Netflix, because, oh my god, it is beautiful. Like, it really is. So let's go ahead and get things started by checking out the trailer for The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. Man, for once, Netflix has outstaged Pixar on this one. I think we can all agree. This trailer right here of The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, this is a way better trailer, because holy crap. Like, holy crap, that was actually pretty epic. So for those of you who don't know, The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance is actually a prequel series on Netflix that is based on Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, which is a 1982 movie in which Jim Henson really wanted to go and escape a little bit in the realm of the Muppets and try to do something that's a lot more serious and create his own magical world, in which the result became The Dark Crystal, which, as time would move on, it would develop a much larger cult following, and now we are at the point where it's pretty popular now that Netflix decided that let's go and bring out an entire series. And just by watching this, I'm gonna be very honest with you guys, it feels like it is made with real magic. And it's just like all the aspects that you will find, like from the setting, the backgrounds, the characters themselves. Like, it feels like most of this is done with legit magic, and everything you see just feels like it's real, like it actually did happen. Now, I know that technically it's not necessarily the case. That's not actually the truth. But the reason why I say this is mainly because you know that the grand majority that you see in this trailer is actually shot in front of the camera, where not only that it used a lot of puppetry, but it also used a lot of practical effects and real sets. I mean, sure, there might have been a little bit of computer graphics. There might have been a little bit of CGI here and there, like a little bit at the beginning where you see like the little fairy characters just spinning around in the forest. There might have been that, but for the most part, everything you see here is actually real. It's actually handcrafted. It's actually made by real people. And technically, this is a place that you can actually enter and you can live in this kind of environment. And the way that it made itself feel huge, this is going to be a big world, and big events are definitely going to be happening in this. It just feels like like what you see here, they made a fantasy world and they actually made it real. And the thing is, the reason why I do feel that way is mainly because for so long, especially in this decade, we have been so sanitized by CGI. Like, we're pretty much used to seeing TV shows and movies that are mostly crafted using computer graphics. And I know technically CGI is supposed to look way better than practical effects and is capable of doing so much more, but we're starting to see so much of it, and we're starting to see CGI pretty much dominate big budget blockbusters to the point that we're starting to become bored of it. It starts to look the same, and even the quality doesn't feel as grand as it was when the technology was introduced. Like, a great example is if you go and check out the recent remake of Aladdin. Let's be honest here, like, regardless of how you feel, we can all agree that the CGI in there, it was pretty crappy. It wasn't all that good, and especially you could tell when the elements are in CGI, when things are not actually there and when things are not actually real, especially with excuse me, but especially with Will Smith as the genie. That CGI was pretty bad, with the way that it tries to emulate the genie from the animated version, and just the way that it goes into this uncanny valley by trying to make it a realistic genie with Will Smith. It's just, a lot of it just doesn't work, and we're starting to be at the point where we're starting to get sick and tired of it. But then you start to get something like the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, where it's using the minimum of computer graphics and is really leaning more towards making things real by actually creating things by hand and showing them in front of the camera. This actually feels fresh. It feels new again. It's giving us something that we haven't seen in a very long time, and that's what makes the effects look absolutely amazing. That is honestly the visual spectacle of this element. It doesn't matter if you have seen the Dark Crystal or not, or if you know the Dark Crystal or not. Like, this is something that is truly a sight to behold. And also, one thing that I will also say that really does make this trailer work is that not only non-fans can check this out and appreciate it, but also I do like the fact that the Dark Crystal, or this trailer here, is actually giving us a bit of nods to the original movie, that we are seeing elements that are going to be coming back. And this is not necessarily just the world of the Dark Crystal and the Skeksis and stuff like that, but also, like, when you go right down in the middle, you do see some recurring settings and some recurring characters coming back. You see all that is returning, and that they're bringing back, like, the little furball guy is actually going to be coming back. That's probably, like, the little furball dude, he's actually the most Muppet element of the whole Dark Crystal, where you do get a little bit of comedy. And by the way, I probably should have started with this, but when it comes to the Dark Crystal, when it comes to the movie, I have seen it, and honestly, it has been a little bit of a while to really form a full thought of it as a movie, but I remember that I am just left with total admiration of the fact that someone has created this highly elaborate and original fantasy world, which is something that's very rare, because it's not every day that we would actually get a full-on fantasy world that's originally coming from a movie. Usually with stuff like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or The Chronicles of Narnia and all those films, usually they would be based on a book. They would be based on something that already exists and something that people already know about. But when it comes to the Dark Crystal, this is a movie that's pretty much not based on anything. This is based on the imagination of Jim Henson, and it is gorgeous. And it really is a movie that brought puppetry to a brand new level that no one has ever seen. And especially the fact that it is coming from Jim Henson, it is a massive leap, going from the comical Muppets to the sweet and kind Sesame Street, and then suddenly going to the Dark Crystal, something that really takes itself highly seriously, something that it knows what it wants to be, something that it's no laughing matter, something that just wants to create this entire world, something that wants to tell this amazing story, introduce these new concepts, these new creatures. Like, this was a movie built from scratch, and that's what I feel like is amazing, and something that is very rare that we would find in fantasy movies. And seeing this here, like, the fact that we do get, like, all these little nods and little references to the different characters that have appeared in The Dark Crystal. I think it is something that, of course, if you're a fan of it, if you have seen The Dark Crystal, then, like, this is something that will immediately be sold to you. Like, this is something that it could come in and you'll see all these things going, oh, I get it. Oh, I like that. Oh, I know what that is. And I'm pretty certain that if this show plays its cards right, then I know for a fact that it will be able to be something that both fans and non-fans can really appreciate. And even for the non-fans, when we get to the moments where we meet up with characters that were introduced in the movie, this is going to be stuff that this is going to be stuff that they can reintroduce them to audiences all over again, so that we know who they are, we know what they do, and even for non-fans, they'll understand them, and by the time that maybe they'll watch this and then suddenly they'll go see the movie, then they'll fully understand what they're getting into, and then they'll know who these characters are, especially the fact that this is supposed to be a prequel. This is supposed to be set everything before the movie itself. So honestly, I don't know what else to say, but this looks amazing. I cannot wait for this movie to come out. This just not this movie, sorry, but this TV show to come out. It's just the visuals are really on point. They are giving us something that it is extremely rare to find, which is high quality puppetry. The visuals are amazing. The story looks like it is going to be epic and that it's going to be taking itself seriously. I am hyped up for it. And if you guys are hyped up for it as well, then all you gotta do is wait until August 30th until The Age of Resistance is coming out on Netflix. So just mark your calendars for that. So with that said, let's go into the chat wall, and I want to ask you guys, what do you all think about The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance? Do you think that this is a hyped up series? Are you guys excited for it? Are you guys disappointed by it? Would you rather the Onward trailer? Let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know if this is for you. Okay, let's see now. What do people have to say? Let's see now. Seeing a piece of media with close to 100% practical effects in modern day seems more like a rarity, so watching this trailer was a breath of fresh air. I need to rewatch The Dark Crystal to remind myself of the world of Thra, but I will be keeping an eye on this. If for anything else, then the Jim Henson Company finally got to continue the story since the sequel never got off the ground. Yep, that is definitely true. And I think that's going to be something that I need to do as well. I already got the Blu-ray of The Dark Crystal, so I'm also going to go and check it out. Like, sometime in August, I need to refresh my memory so that I can get into this series. So you did remind me of something that I got to do later on. Okay, let's see here. All I gotta say is, oh hell yeah, baby! Visually, it looks perfect. I know that in my year 2 class of visual effects, that my visual effects teacher will be showing this amazing series a lot, and I would love to do something like Dark Crystal for a class project. I'm a huge fan of the original Dark Crystal, so I'm so pleased that the majority of the stuff from the original is recreated with great care and passion. So I am so hyped for this. I really do hope that someone would do a request for you, Matt, to review it. Well, we'll see. I mean, like, maybe someone could do it. Let's see. I don't want... Okay, hold on a sec. We do get a troll here, so... just need to make sure I gotta take care of that. Okay, anyway, sorry about that, people. Just need to take care of a little situation. At least I'm more on point. At least now, like, the trolling has been happening when I'm looking at the chat wall, so I am being aware of that. Anyways, let's go back into this, that was outrageous. I've never heard of The Dark Crystal before that. I usually like the entire place that ruled the forest and every land. I might say it was a great show. Hopefully it will be on Netflix. Yeah, it will be on Netflix. It's on August 30th. You just need to be patient. Like, just go through the summer, and then by that time, when summer will be done, then you can relax and just have fun with Age of Resistance. Alright, let's see now. this trailer really blew my mind. I thought it was CGI at first from the beginning, but when it reveals that it's actually puppetry, it really blew my mind. Forgive me, but I've never seen the Dark Crystal movie before, so I gotta see this movie first before I watch the series. I hope this new show doesn't disappoint me like with the final season of the Game of Thrones. I've been fresh off from that disastrous final season, so I hope this new show will cheer me up. Oh yeah, definitely. If you need something to cheer up, it's gonna be the Dark Crystal. And you know what? You know what could be the best thing about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is that it really does bring back the popularity of the Dark Crystal. Like, there are a lot of people out there who have yet to see the movie, but hopefully Netflix will also put the film onto the streaming service as well so that more people can be introduced by it. So, honestly, with the Dark Crystal, it really does bring back the popularity of the movie, and who knows, maybe like it can bring it to new heights that it has never been before. Like, not only just being a cult classic, but maybe the Dark Crystal could end up being as popular as the Muppets. Who knows? That's the beauty of it, though, is that it really does take a cult classic and bring it onto the mainstream. And it's just wonderful to see people get excited all over again for puppetry and for the works of Jim Henson. It really is epic, you know. That's the great, you know. It's just, it brings out such a great feeling. And as a Jim Henson fan myself, I just feel like there's just so much good that's coming out of this series. Let's see now. The show looks amazing and the voice cast is fantastic. I hope it lives up to the hype. Also, it is good to know that they're doing something with the Dark Crystal, as these projects based off their old properties tend to get into development hell. For example, nothing has been announced about that Labyrinth sequel for a couple of years now, and not to mention the long-developed Fraggle Rock movie that might not be coming out, which is sad. I am so happy that people are talking about this, and I hope the show garners big ratings, or probably something. It just stopped right there. Okay, so I'm glad that a lot of people are really hyped up for this. I'm glad that people are really excited for this series. So now, with that said, let's go ahead and jump onto our next story. And this one here, oh boy, are we gonna get into some pretty nasty conversations onto this. I just spilled my water. Holy crap, I gotta go clean that up later. But anyways, let me get back into this right now. Discussing about this, it's the fact that we're getting into the Disney live-action remakes. And I know that subject has been pretty popular and also pretty controversial. And especially something that this week in particular, a lot of people have been talking about it, especially when the live-action remake of Aladdin has been surprisingly successful and made a lot of money at the box office so far. But then there is also the aspect of The Lion King, the live-action remake of The Lion King, where Disney decided to release character posters, and a lot of people have been talking, and some have been either impressed or disappointed of the fact that the animals in The Lion King look exactly like freaking animals. That, oh man, these look the same, they look like lions. Well, I mean, yeah, because that's what you ask for when you want a live-action remake of The Lion King, you know? It's like, well, be careful what you wish for, because that's the thing. It's the freaking Lion King. Bringing it to a live-action environment, that's what they're gonna look like. What the frick do you want? But I'm not gonna be talking about any of that, though. Let's go now, and oh boy, this troll cannot go away, seriously. Okay, anyways, what I was talking about, sorry, just got a little distracted by another troll. Yes, we're not going to be talking about any of that. It's not about Aladdin. It's not about The Lion King. It's about something that Disney wants to do. Disney wants to make a Snow White live-action remake. Yes, Disney is currently in talks with director Marc Webb in order to go and create a live-action remake to their 1937 animated classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Director Marc Webb, however, is not the only person that Disney is talking to in order to develop this movie. There is also the screenwriter of The Girl on the Train, Aaron Cressida Wilson, who might be a writer on this project, and also they might consider bringing on board Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, the songwriting duo who has done movies such as La La Land, The Greatest Showman, and you might have recently heard their latest song, Speechless, in the live-action remake of Aladdin. But it looks like they want to have them to go and write brand new songs for the movie. Now, in the case of Marc Webb, however, it is not official that he would be the one to direct this project. It has stated here in my source through Variety, while the deal isn't finalized, sources tell Variety that Webb is the top choice to helm the movie. So they got several options, but who they are eyeing the most is Marc Webb. Now, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with this director, he has done a few movies that have been pretty acclaimed, some small movies, but they have been recognized even at the Oscars, films such as Gifted and 500 Days of Summer. But probably his most famous work, and probably the one great example of a work about what he does when he's in an environment of a big budget production made by a major Hollywood studio. In that case, Marc Webb is well known to be the director of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Yes, this is the guy who has directed both Spider-Man films that star Andrew Garfield. And honestly, when I look at all this news, when I look at the people that Disney wants to bring on board, when I see Disney wanting to make a Snow White movie, all this is just no. Everything about this is just filled with no, and it's just wrong here. Like, holy crap. This is just, where do I freaking begin with this? I mean, first off, let's talk about Marc Webb. Now, this is not to bash Marc Webb himself. This is not to bash the guy. And I know for a fact that he can be a pretty talented director, capable of actually making some good movies. But here's the thing about Marc Webb. Marc Webb is only good when you limit the guy. He is only good when you give him a smaller budget, when you give him a smaller production. That's when you see his side of Gifted and 500 Days of Summer. That's the Marc Webb that is able to control himself and work with the small materials that he has. But then when you go and give him a big production like The Amazing Spider-Man, that's when, and especially something that is based on an already existing property that's very popular, that's at the point where he can go and really screw things up. That he can make a pretty controversial movie that can really divide audiences and just make an entire mess out of it. So already the idea of Marc Webb directing something like Snow White, that I'm not 100% sure. Now, I cannot necessarily comment about Aaron Cressida Wilson regarding being the writer of this project, considering that this would technically be the first time that she would go into this kind of movie, that she would enter into making what could technically be a Disney film. So, I don't know, maybe it would be a good idea, maybe not. But then there's the factor of Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. Now, I have stated this before that I am not necessarily a fan of these songwriters. It's not that they do anything bad. It's not that their songs are terrible or of poor quality. It's just that when they try to execute a song, they feel so bland. They feel so forgetful. They feel like they're so corporately manufactured. They feel like they were purposely made for the sake of having to sell soundtracks and to put it on the radio. And that's pretty much it. It's just that they're not talented enough to make something that's memorable, to have something that can really stand out. Now, I know that they've had major hits before, especially like This Is Me through The Greatest Showman. It's just that whenever they try to create a song, they just feel like bland and forgettable pop songs that's trying to be like every other pop song. You know, that's the problem that I've had with the soundtrack of La La Land, with the soundtrack of The Greatest Showman, and even with Speechless in the live-action remake of Aladdin. I feel like that's one of the weakest components of the live-action remake. And you want to bring them on board to make new songs for Snow White? I mean, you're bringing the guys who would usually go and create these songs that are more fitted for our modern age with pop songs, adding a beat to it and all that kind of stuff. You're putting them to make new songs on a movie that's based on a 1937 animated feature. Are you sure about that, Disney? Are you sure you want to go and do that? And especially, like, some people have even brought up a pretty good point about that. Honestly, the thing is, with the songs by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, I feel like they fit more, like, they make the songs that you would hear, like, in Ugly Dolls. That's the thing. Songs like Speechless and This Is Me, I feel like no matter how well-intentioned they are, no matter how powerful the message is, they feel like they belong in something like Ugly Dolls that's just a completely corporately manufactured, generic, bland pop song. That's the thing. But here's the one thing that probably shocks me the most about all this news. The one thing that I feel like this is a bad idea, more so than having Marc Webb direct this movie, more so than having Benj Pasek and Justin Paul making new songs for it, it's the fact that Disney wants to make a live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I have two reasons as to why on this. Now, reason number one is mainly because of the fact that it feels like Disney is not learning anything. You'd think that they would learn from their mistakes of the past, but no, even if it's just a couple of months, they have learned clearly frickin' nothing. Case in point, take a look at what happened to the live-action remake of Dumbo. The thing is with Dumbo is that movie is actually a box office bomb. There is no denying, especially with the fact that it has especially with the fact that it has such a huge $170 million budget, Disney has lost money on that live-action remake. Now, many analysts have concluded that one of the key reasons as to why Dumbo became a massive flop is because it's based on a really old property, and that's why Dumbo did not work as well as something like the live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin. It's mainly because it's way too old. It's nearly 80 years old. People don't have as much nostalgia on that as much as they would on something like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, in which those films were released in the 90s. There are plenty of people to this day that are still alive and might have remembered when Beauty and the Beast was originally released, or when Aladdin was released back in the early 90s, or at least their original animated versions. So with that, if Dumbo failed, what makes you think that doing Snow White will do anything better? Seriously, that just does not make sense to me. It's just, I thought after Dumbo, Disney would just vow to not make any live-action remakes based on their much older properties. Or at the very least, if they would do that, then they would completely reduce the budget and they would just put it onto Disney Plus. That they would not make it as big and elaborate as their as the ones that would be released in theaters. I thought about that, but it doesn't look like it seems to be the case. And now they really tried to bank hard on that. It just, honestly, I feel like it doesn't make sense. Like, why would you do that, Disney? And I also have a bit of a second reason as to why. So it's almost slipping my mind. Like, I just thought about the second reason as to why, about the element of snow. Oh! That's it! Yes! Now I just realized why it doesn't make sense. It's mainly the thing is, why do we need Disney to make a live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs when we've already gotten so many live-action remakes of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs before. If you guys don't remember, at the beginning of this decade, we have already received not one, but two, or technically 3 live-action remakes of Snow White. They may not be directly based on Disney, but they're based on the Snow White story. You might remember about Snow White and the Huntsman starring Kristen Stewart and Chris Hemsworth. You might remember that it also had a sequel as well. And then there was also Mirror Mirror. There's all those movies. You might remember Mirror Mirror, by the way, starring Julia Roberts and Lily Collins. It's just, why do we need that when we've already gotten plenty of Snow White remakes out there? Okay, we've already got enough. People have already tried it. It didn't necessarily work as well. And nowadays, people might have already forgotten about them. I certainly did. I just forgot about it right now. And then, really, Disney doing that, I honestly, overall, when it comes to this news right over here, it's just, everything about this feels like it's just most likely gonna fail. This feels like a disaster in the making. Disney is getting the wrong people to make this project, and especially the fact that it's based on a massively old property. It's like they're gonna make another Dumbo with this. It's just, this is not gonna work, guys. Disney, if you can, just bail on this right now. Just completely bail out. Abort mission on this. If you want to make a lot, for God's sakes, there are plenty of other live-action remakes that you can do. There are still plenty of, you still got a lot of them that are from the Disney Renaissance to really capitalize on nostalgia. Are you sure you don't want to do, a live-action remake of Tarzan, of Hercules? I don't think you have, or Pocahontas. I don't think you've made any announcements on that yet. But freaking Snow White, man, leave the classic alone, man. Just leave that classic alone. Oh, boy. I don't know. I do not have any hopes for this. But then again, there could be that very small chance that I could totally be wrong and this could actually turn out to be really good. That, or maybe Disney might cancel it. Nothing is official yet. There's, as this stated, they're only in talks to see if they can bring people on board like Marc Webb or Aaron Cressida Wilson or Ben Pasek and Justin Paul. Nothing is confirmed just yet. It's just this idea feels like it is a disaster in the making. And even though Disney is in a position where they can afford a few box office bombs, this just feels like this is just setting up to become another one of their box office bombs. So with all that said, I want to know onto the chat wall, and I'm going to go to you guys and ask, what do you all think about this news of Disney trying to remake Snow White with Marc Webb as the director? Do you guys agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think this could be a good idea? Or do you think this is going to suck? Let me know what you all think.